Okay, Lee Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, please, for Councillor Rebecca Knox. I think you was in agreement that your force was institutionally racist. Is that correct?
I agreed with the report, the independent report, and so did the Chief Fire Officer accept the findings.
Okay, so
of that
can you
report.
please tell me, Councillor, what unfair advantages white people have in your force?
I would hope not. None. Not advantages. Did I hear you?
Yeah, do they have any advantages?
No.
So then how can you be institutionally racist?
Sorry, I might have to get back to you.
No, you don't. You've said your force was institutionally racist, yet white people
misogynist
yet white people have no advantage at all.
Yes.
So how can it be racist?
Maybe I was interpreting the phrase of it as a whole, as a phrase that Nazir summed up. But I would absolutely stand by that the force was not racist. But going back to the way that it was described.
I'm sorry. You said you agreed that your force was institutionally racist. So now I'm asking you, how is it racist? What advantages do white people have in your force?
And I'm saying that there are no advantages.
So then it can't be racist. Okay, just one more question, Chair. Just try and nail this down. What group of people in your force have an unfair advantage in their employment?
I think what the independent report and our previous report identified was that we needed more safe spaces for females and others to be able to call out where they were experiencing unfortunate and bad behaviour within the workplace. We have put in some processes which will allow for that. We've got a Safe To campaign, which means that individuals can find exactly the type of assistance and practical help they need in order to address the concerns of misconduct within the workplace.
I get that, but I didn't ask
Thank
that.
you.
I didn't ask that. I asked which group of people have an unfair advantage within your force.
And I'm sorry, I was just trying to say to you that I think perhaps the females and others who haven't felt that they could call out and speak out in a safe space were disadvantaged, but now we are addressing that. We're not complacent to the fact that that was a need which was identified in the independent report that was commissioned.
A senior local government councillor found herself under sharp scrutiny this week when Conservative MP Lee Anderson pressed her to back up claims of institutional racism within a police force. Lie to see the witness struggle to produce clear evidence under questioning. Councillor Rebecca Knox, who had previously endorsed a report labeling the force institutionally racist, appeared before a parliamentary committee to discuss issues of equity and policing. The session quickly turned tense when Anderson asked Knox to specify what unfair advantages white people supposedly enjoy within the force's structures. What are the unfair advantages that white people have in this police force, Councillor? Can you give me a single example? Anderson asked, his tone measured but pointed. Knox, appearing visibly unsettled, began by referencing disparities in stop and search data and perceptions of community trust, but when pressed for a concrete internal practice or policy that benefits white officers over minority officers, she struggled to give specifics. The exchange is emblematic of a broader tension within discussions of race in UK institutions. While reports labeling organizations as institutionally racist often cite disparities in outcomes, critics like Anderson argue that proving institutional racism requires clear evidence of practices that unfairly advantage one group over another. Knox, trying to clarify, suggested that the issue was not about explicit policies, but unconscious biases and systemic structures, a framing that has become common in public sector discussions about race. However, Anderson pressed again. If we're going to label an entire force as racist, the public deserves to see the specific, measurable evidence of how white people are treated better within it. Observers noted that while Knox's intention was to highlight disparities and build trust with communities of color, her lack of specific examples under questioning left the argument appearing underdeveloped in the public forum. For supporters of the report, The key issue remains systemic disparities that require attention, regardless of whether they manifest through clear, documented policy advantages. However, for critics, such as Anderson and others within the conservative ranks, these discussions risk branding entire organizations with serious accusations without the rigor of evidence needed to justify the label. The session ended with Anderson summarizing his concern. "We can't fix what we can't define. And if we are going to call our police force institutionally racist, we need to show the country exactly where, how, and why." As debates about policing, race, and public trust continue to dominate headlines, this exchange underscores a growing call for clarity and evidence in how serious accusations of institutional racism are made and addressed. For many watching, it also highlights a pivotal moment where the conversation risks stalling if advocates cannot translate general concerns into precise, actionable facts. Whether Knox and others can provide that clarity in future sessions may determine whether institutional reform can proceed with public trust, or whether it will face a backlash from those who see the term institutional racism as wielded too freely, with too little evidence, and too high a cost to confidence in policing. And now we come to a row erupts between former Labour advisor Matthew Leza and former Conservative MP Anna Firth amid a debate about the implications of Rachel Reeves crying in the House of Commons.
So, well, go on. The other aspect to this, Anna, of course, we were focusing a bit on Rachel Reeves there, but Sir Keir Starmer standing up there and he's peddling the line that he had no idea that it was going on next to him. I get that there's cuss and thrust at PMQs. With the best will in the world, if one of you started crying now, I'd notice. I would notice. We would all notice.
Well, actually, I can't look. Seriously, Patrick, I can't actually see Anna's face from the angle I'm seeing it. Yeah, absolutely. But look, it's, you know, I think the idea that she was necessarily going to see what was going. She wasn't like weeping. Some tears were slipping down her face.
Sir Keir Starmer.
Yes.
Is he not asking us to think that he's the most oblivious man in Bristol?
No, Sir Keir Starmer is a robot. He's got the empathy, the emotional intelligence of a dead slug. So I totally get the fact that he would not have noticed what on earth was going on around him. But the point here is that he looks fundamentally weak by what has happened. And for Matthew to say that this is just some little thing and it doesn't matter, that is actually completely wrong. It does matter.
Why does it matter?
It matters, Matthew.
When borrowing costs have gone back to where they were.
It matters, Matthew. But
yeah, come on, tell me how.
I'll tell you why.
Tell me how. Well, let's hear Anna.
So my husband works in the city. He came back at 11:30 last night, 3 hours late, because he's trying to get investment into UK banks. That is his job. Last night, all his clients are ringing, saying, should I now be selling? Because are we now looking at a situation where Keir Starmer is not going to last? Because the story always begins with the Chancellor. When the Chancellor goes, as we saw with Kwasi, as we've seen in the past with Rishi, we know how that story ends. That is why...
Well, the city's pretty emphatic in what it says about Rachel today. Another quote from an economist in the city: the gilt market likes the ironclad commitment to the fiscal rules and Chancellor Reeves' strong track record.
That leads me on to the next point.
Hold on. Let's be clear. She has failed. She's 57 billion behind where she wanted to be. Let's be clear. If you ask businesses in this country, the first thing they'll tell you about is her NI rights.
Guys,
they'll tell you about that. The markets are important, but they're not only.
No, they're not. And a year ago today, when you and I and Patrick were all in a darts in Essex, you mustn't forget, we're along with some lovely GB.
On honeymoon
instead you were with me, Sean, and 500 GB News viewers.
But,
you know,
I'm pleased you're in Essex.
It's a fine county, but it is a year ago that the Tories were thrown out of office, and the Tories today are slipping into fourth place in the polls.
Matthew,
of course, the government.
Matthew, that is a total irrelevance.
It's not an irrelevance. Your party's dying.
We have had.
You won't have a party to be a member of, Anna.
I cannot believe you've got the brass neck to sit on this sofa and say that. Your party is now destroying our economy.
How's it destroying the economy?
You tell that to the family farmers. You tell that to
the family farm, the £3 million owner family farmers. Anna, if what you think is so popular, why is no nobody voting for it.
You need to come down to Essex more often. You need to talk to the small businesses.
Why don't you go to Kent? Why don't you go to all the councils that your party lost, Anna? Because the Tories are dead in the water. You can scream as Anna. You can scream as much as you like.
Even the camera's gone mental.
You can scream as much as you like, Anna, but the Tories are finished and you know it.
Okay.